Hello, guys and gals, me Mudahar, and today we're going to talk about one of the wildest cases on the internet that has basically taken everyone by storm for at least the last week. Now, ladies and gentlemen, by now you've probably watched a few other channels talk about this individual right here, okay? Now, this individual is known as Corey Harris, and Corey Harris was somebody that was apparently calling in to an actual court meeting about a suspended driver's license while driving. So when this happened, the internet was rightfully making fun of the guy because he did something incredibly stupid. But obviously the story had a lot of twists and turns to the point where tons of news organizations and channels were kind of correcting themselves, like, we should really apologize to this guy now. Now, I like waiting for this kind of stuff to happen because when I first saw this clip on Twitter, I immediately in my head, when I saw the reactions from the judge, the actual Corey himself, and the lawyers, that there was something deeper going on. And so I decided to wait and let the whole story play out, and it turns out it is actually wild indeed. So let's begin from the very beginning and see exactly how this whole situation started. So in this first clip, this is the actual infamous one that went viral where Corey ends up calling in for a charge. So let's actually watch this real quick.
Case, People versus Corey Harris.
Conrad Siller on behalf of Pittsfield Township.
Assistant Public Defender Natalie Tate for Mr. Harris, who should be present via Zoom.
Mr. Harris.
So immediately, Corey Harris shows up into his court hearing, which, by the way, let me just get this exact fact down right here. So according to the news, the Michigan man called into a court appearance for driving with a suspended license. And yes, if you're watching the footage like I am, he is in fact driving while calling in about the suspended license. Now, of course, it shouldn't take a Nobel laureate to figure out you can't be doing that, okay? It's also bad to start off a call while driving, okay? Holding up a phone while you're driving in any part of the world usually involves the cops opening up their flashers, pulling you over, and writing you that juicy ticket. But again, let's watch this play out. Let's go.
Harris, are you driving?
Actually, I'm pulling into my doctor's office, actually. So just give me 1 second. I'm parking right now.
Wait. You stationary?
I'm pulling in right now at this second. Yes, I am.
Okay, you know, when you make the judge do one of these, you already started it off with a bad situation. All the lawyers in this room are sitting there going, no fucking way. And then this guy, if you were pulling in and you were like 30 seconds away, click the Zoom link 30 seconds later. Now, immediately when I watched this, I'm like, this whole situation could have been avoided if he pulled over on the side of the road, got out of the car, answered the Zoom meeting, and even if you're standing on the sidewalk, it's a lot better than driving your car while going to court over a suspended license. You got the judge here laughing. And of course, it's not really a joke because what the judge does later is actually shocking.
All right. What are we doing?
Your Honor, we are respectfully requesting an adjournment in this matter, up possibly 2 to 4 weeks if the court would allow.
Okay. So maybe I don't understand something. This is a driving while license suspended,
That is correct, Your Honor.
and he was just driving, and he didn't have a license.
Oh,
Look at his face. He's like, oh, wait, whoa, the gears are turning in the old noggin there. I mean, everyone's laughing at the situation because it's so fucking absurd. And this is the reason why I didn't want to cover this initially, because he's shocked, he's in obvious shock, and every lawyer sitting over here is like, bro, what is going on in this fine state that we are barred under? So clearly I was like, there's got to be something deep in this situation. So after this long pause, the judge decides to actually hand out the verdict, which is pretty bad for our buddy Corey here.
I don't even know why he would do that. So defendant's bond is revoked in this matter. Defendant is to turn himself into the Washington County Jail by 6 p.m. today. Failure to turn himself in will result in a bench warrant with no bond.
God damn, he's got to turn himself in. Dude's got the whole 4-star wanted rating. So by 6 p.m., Corey ended up turning himself in and actually served 2 days in custody. So while Corey was basically going viral, his one response to pretty much everyone was that apparently this was due to a clerical error. So what had basically happened was it turned out that Corey Harris's license was apparently reinstated over 2 years ago, but it just never appeared on his file due to a clerical error. Now look, I understand problems happen all the time when it comes in the entire DMV, okay? The DMV is literally like the 7th layer of goddamn hell. And I'm gonna give you like 2 examples here too. To give you an idea about how weird driving laws are, driving is pretty much mandated state to state, okay? If you're in Canada, for instance, I know it's not the United States, we have what is known as Ontario driver's license if you live in the province of Ontario. This would be different if you lived in the province of Alberta or Quebec. And the same thing goes in all 50 states of the United States, right? So if you have a California driver's license, it is the state of California certifying you to operate a motor vehicle. Now, other states have their own license. So Michigan has their own, New York has their own, Alabama has their own, and it's typically understood that every state will recognize the other's driving license. So when you, for example, drive from California to Nevada, for instance, which is a pretty common drive, the state of Nevada will say, all right, Californians, you can drive your vehicle, okay? We understand you know how to drive just like Nevada people. But if you have an actual suspension or a violation in a state, then while your license may be recognized, you might be suspended from driving in that state in general. One of the weird things that I've had in life was I almost actually had a warrant, I would assume for my arrest at this point, because of an issue that I had in New York State, where I must have driven into the city at one point and I must have touched a toll bridge or something, and I didn't pay for it at the time. So it really wasn't something that I found out until like, I would say a couple of years after the fact when I actually pulled up into one of my old like places where I lived and I had a envelope sitting there, okay? It was one of these orange envelopes. They had like these specially colored things, which I was like, all right, this is gonna be really messed up. And it was from like the NYPD, the New York Traffic or whatever department. And I opened it up and they were like, bitch, you forgot to pay. They had my license plate, they had everything. Lo and behold, I went through the internet portals, I found my violation, and luckily I paid it off. And for now, as far as my understanding goes, the New York State Police has never ended up pulling me over or giving me a license or giving me an infraction on the same license plate. But sometimes you can have other issues too. Like right here in this bin, I have like a bunch of letters for things that I have as actual record for if I ever have to go to court. And it's nothing super serious. Like, I had this one parking violation in the city of Toronto, which they gave my entire violation number, gave my entire license plate number, and they told me that I had to pay a certain amount by a due date. Now, the problem is, it got sent to an older address. So again, I had to basically make sure that I looked up the policy number, the violation, and I ended up trying to pay it. Lo and behold, I go to the website and I'm like, there is no parking violation. So normal people would be like, oh, thank Jesus, I don't have an issue with the police. My ass calls up the Ministry of Transportation. I'm like, I need you to fucking confirm that this isn't real. And I must have paid it or something must have happened. Maybe there was a clerical problem. Moral of the story is, this is a system run by human beings, and the clerical nature of it is not entirely automated or computerized in every single capacity. Usually when you file something, it's not as if a flag gets tripped like it would be a computer program. Usually a human being processes things through, and sometimes shit falls through the crack. So I was wondering, with all the surprise going on in Corey's story, maybe it was a situation where, yeah, he must have tried to do something, and he maybe paid a due, maybe he filed something, and maybe it just didn't trip, or the human at the actual DMV forgot to do something, or maybe they got shit confused, okay? It happens. It's a human problem. Now, the internet decided, oh shit, man, we gotta be with our boy Corey. So they put the crosshairs onto the actual judge right here and the state of Michigan, because they're like, bro, the guy spent 2 days in custody for something that he apparently didn't seem to do. If his license was reinstated 2 years ago, why the hell do they not have the accurate information right now? It's even unclear why the public defender actually in Corey's case, and I get that public defenders are very overworked lawyers that work in the public service, didn't catch the error in advance before the situation came in? Why was this so present? So while Corey got a new lawyer and they were basically talking about how this was apparently a clerical error and like, hey, listen, he was made fun of, he was made a joke of on the internet, and he genuinely felt like his feelings were completely hurt in this situation. I get it. But obviously the state decided to clap right on back, okay? So apparently it turns out he never actually had a fucking license to begin with, okay? So apparently what had happened was people looked through online court records and found that apparently there was an old child support case that he had, which showed that apparently the judge ordered a suspension that would have been rescinded in January 2022. But the reality of it is I was kind of wondering how a child support situation was going to come into this stuff as well. But usually if you're delinquent with one payment with the state, it might cause issues with something else. It's not uncommon. It's kind of one of the reasons why if you don't pay your parking tickets or you have like an actual speeding infraction with the Ministry of Transportation or any DMV organization, they might not choose to renew your, plate stickers every year. It can cause a lot of problems. You got to make sure you're basically paid up with the state and all of its rackets before you decide to even engage in society. So what had basically come out is, even though that, I guess, the judge ordered the suspension to be rescinded, the apparent situation was that Harris never actually paid a fee to have it lifted at their clerk's office. But even if Harris had paid those fees, it would not have given him the green light to drive because he apparently never had a license. So it was really wild with this information that the judge has now made available in public is that apparently you can actually have suspension show up in your record, okay, in your driving record and somehow not have a license. And I don't know how necessarily this is possible. It would be tangentially related to any other issue you've had. Maybe they would have put that suspension on because of apparently a child support case. But apparently, yes, if that person was ever able to obtain a driving license, they would still not have the privilege of driving until they cleared all their suspensions, which it seems like maybe the suspensions were cleared. Now, of course, one of the things the judge brought up was actually that he would have known that he didn't have a driver's license because he actually renewed state identification. Okay, so if you don't know, if you don't have a driver's license, you will probably get a state ID. And the reason why people would get the state ID is because maybe they can't actually drive. They don't have the ability to get a driver's license, but they still want to be recognized as a member of the state. So they get the fucking state ID. Okay, it's why there's different options. So if you're renewing your state ID, you fucking consciously know that because you're renewing that specific piece of identification, you don't have the other, which would typically be the driver's license, right? So even though that he was stunned basically at the end of that entire clip that everyone was basically watching on the internet, in this situation, everyone was basically shocked, okay? Everyone was shocked. Even the new defense attorney was shocked. Everyone was wilded out, okay? So it really came out into the situation that even the judge was like, everyone's basically got to own this situation. It's got to be Corey that owns this entire situation, and it was apparently no error by anybody, and it was a failure on the part of Mr. Harris to do certain things, said Judge Simpson, who was also acknowledging that it can sometimes be a complicated process, but it was certainly not anybody's fault, okay, except the person right here. And look, it's in one of these situations that I can kind of understand, right? Obviously, a lot of people have brought up situations like maybe this is somebody who's just genuinely ignorant of the law. And there's actually an entire Latin phrase for this in law, which is or ignorantia juris non excusat, which is the ignorance of the law excuses not. Now, obviously, this is still a complex situation because if you actually read about this and how it's applied in law, there are some places where sometimes it can be a valid defense if you're genuinely ignorant of the law. And one of those is, for example, when you're talking about the Internal Revenue Code or tax law, where again, understanding in Cheek versus United States that an actual good faith belief based on a misunderstanding caused by the complexity of the tax law is a valid legal defense. So where ignorance is not a valid defense is, let's say all of a sudden you're like, hey judge, I didn't know that murder was illegal in this country. That's a shock to me. Well, everyone would be like, shut the fuck up. Everyone knows murder is illegal basically everywhere, okay? So you would go to jail for murder, right? Or any understandable crime or offense, a major offense that typically is understood to be illegal everywhere. But if you look up, again, Title 26, the Internal Revenue Code, and you just hit view, you want to test your Chrome browser's capability on consuming RAM, open this page up because it is one of the longest pieces of text, one of the most complicated pieces of tax law probably in the world. It might even rival the Bible in goddamn length. And to understand this requires people who specifically go to school to understand this situation. There are lawyers, accountants that still don't understand the complexities of the tax law itself. That's why you'll still find like 30-year experienced accountants still pulling up the actual tax law and looking over common definitions, because nobody wants to be wrong. So being ignorant of the minutia in this specific text can be understood and can become a valid defense. And I guess you could kind of parallel it with driving patterns as well too. If you don't understand renewals, how to navigate the system, it could be a valid defense. And maybe Corey did have a case until it turned out that maybe he was just withholding information from his own lawyers and the judge as well. If you never took the time to own up to your own kerfuffle and your oopsie, that doesn't make you exempt from the law. You still have to pay your dues to society, and you still have to make sure you clear up your own issue. Now, it even came out that even the judge was a bit of a shady character as well, too. So, for instance, one of the things that I looked up on Ballotpedia was Judge Cedric Simpson's judicial misconduct trial from 2014 to 2017 as well, too. And even this judge kind of shows where, like, everyone in the system isn't exactly the greatest character in the world, too. I often feel like people often take this exact, like, side. It's like you either have to be on the side of one or the other, and there can never be, like, a good nuanced understanding. The way that this judge acted and how they delivered this judgment to this Corey fellow, which, look, at the end of the day, I don't think this was the biggest deal in the world. It's not like this was a murder trial or something. This was a goddamn clerical issue in regards to a driving situation. And a situation where clearly Corey can operate a motor vehicle. Well, it's not like he put anybody's life in actual succinct danger if you were to realistically look at it. So the way the judge was kind of acting honestly felt like he really pushed a lot of, I guess you could say, anger. I guess there was a lot of personal feelings into the situation. So when I was looking at this one case from 2014, what happened was the Michigan Judicial Tenure Commission filed a formal complaint against this judge for interfering in a police investigation involving their intern, Crystal Vargas. After a judicial misconduct hearing, the JTC recommended that Simpson be removed from the bench. And in July 2017, the Michigan Supreme Court ordered him to serve a 9-month suspension without pay. So they go over the intern's drunk driving arrest in 2013, a complaint then filed against Simpson. So Simpson allegedly contacted the attorney, Victor Lilich, Pittsfield Township City, and again on September 10th and 17th, saying that they wanted to help Vargas, and the two agreed that Lilich would sit on the matter until Vargas found an attorney. And of course, he starts to involve himself when realistically the law should have played out in a fair and just manner. And he had to pay a $7,565 fine and serve a 9-month suspension, okay? Effective immediately when that judgment was put down. In fact, in the opinion over here, the dissenting opinion written by Justice Markman indicated that he believes Simpson should have been removed from the bench. In recent cases, the court has made it reasonably clear that a judicial officer who lies during the course of disciplinary proceedings is not competent to sit as a judge, and we have subsequently removed such judges from the office. And if you want to read the full text of the complaint, you can actually read it directly on Ballotpedia if you wanted. You can pull it up right from the government, right from the Court of Michigan itself. Now, I didn't bring this entire aspect up to necessarily crap on the judge. It's just something that came up in my research that really, at first glance, made me feel like maybe there's a bit more of a personal attachment to this, or maybe this judge's, I guess you could say judgment was harsh for some weird reason. Maybe it was improperly handled. I don't know. There's a billion things running through my head. But at the end of the day, this is a story about actual personal responsibility. I think if I was living in this section, I'd be angry as a taxpayer, like in this area, because the amount of money wasted in court hearings and meetings actually stands to ultimately be at the cost of the average citizen. This guy's biggest issue was apparently not even having a license in the first place, not even being licensed to drive. And given the history and how the lawyers were treated and how they were even shocked, I have to imagine this person is effectively just a liar in this whole situation. So this is not a story of just, I would assume, a clerical error. This, at least personally to me, feels like somebody that is okay with lying and okay with basically just not following basic tenets of the law. Now, do I think ultimately at the end that he is like the worst person imaginable? I do think that ultimately, since this was like a non-violent crime or anything, this person should basically be put through getting a license in the first place. And honestly, they probably should still be supervised, because just not following a law this simple shows some serious ineptitude and maybe almost willful, like ignorant, not willful, but like willful, just willfully not wanting to obey the law in the first place. This was a situation that could have so easily been resolved over the course of the years of this man's life that I'm surprised it hasn't, and it probably was due to this person just not giving a shit. And honestly, at that moment, I think the guy should really be supervised. Even when driving, or even in the process of, I guess, getting the learner's permit and then the license. It's such a dumb story, and it's taken so many twists and turns that I'm finally glad that it's come to its actual conclusion. Now, unless Corey has a twin, evil twin or something that's been setting him up, I don't see this going anywhere. But yeah, wild story over the course of a week, and a perfect example of why you should wait before you offer retractions and apologies and just get the full story and the full understanding of a case so brazenly wild. That said, this is me, Mudahar, and I am out.